You're working with acclaimed global choir of the earth to help singers in the choir learn and record this incredible piece of music, one of the great masterpieces of the English Renaissance. Josh, can I ask you what makes this piece so special for you?
I think for me, it kind of encompasses the whole the whole of when I started singing, really. Um, it's a piece which I've sung since the age of about 7. It's probably one of the kind of masses that keeps on coming back when you're a chorister, when we're doing 8 services a week in a cathedral choir. So it's one which you get to know more and more you do it, and you find these little intricate kind of details. I think that's what actually makes it quite so special to be able to really kind of rehearse it as well with kind of Choir of the Earth. Kind of Ben is so good at finding these kind of intricate details. And there's so much in there. 'Cause Bird's such an amazing composer that he kind of just like weaves one line into the next kind of so effortlessly. Um, yeah, I think it's just an absolutely kind of incredible piece of music and really kind of sells what it is to be um, kind of a recusant Catholic at the time, where kind of they were really trying to hide all this kind of this pain that they weren't allowed to celebrate the Mass, and
Mm,
then Bird's still able to kind of create this amazing piece of music, which really kind of sells what kind of religion is to him.
yeah, absolutely. Ali, is there something about this piece that makes it special for you?
My experience with this music is that I sung it a bit at university, but not. You do a piece once and you don't really get into it, and then joined the group, and then we really got into it with Secret Bird, as Simon said, on that US tour, and then Ireland, we did a trip to Ireland. We did it 14 times, and you start to appreciate some of the genius of it all. And there's that sort of the first half of the mass. It begins each time the same with the same sort of melody, the same motif. And from that, such different results occur. I don't know, I'm not very good at explaining this sort of thing, but it's almost like a hook which the listener sort of is drawn in by and so, oh, there's something familiar here, and then it turns into something quite extraordinary. So in the Kyrie, as we're learning this, just listen to the difference between how the Kyrie starts and the Credo starts. Well, they start the same, and they expand into some two quite extraordinarily different pieces. So I suppose there's that. And then my favorite bit is just the Agnus. The Agnus is incredible. And it's you've got these sort of in that the first the alto and the soprano lines really are in dialogue with each other, and they're sort of overlapping, and it feels a bit like a duet. And yeah, that is just incredible. And there's the ranking up of intensity in that is great. And when we perform it in Secret Bird, it's at that moment where the sort of like emotional crux of it all is, where the mass, which is taking place in secret, then gets interrupted, and it's right at the emotional apex, and then it gets shattered. The atmosphere gets completely interrupted. So I would say, yeah, the Arnius is probably my highlight.
Brilliant stuff. And Owen, how challenging is this work for singers, would you say?
Yeah, I think it's hard because it's emotionally, as Josh was explaining a little bit about the circumstances in which Bird was writing this music, um, it's intense. Um, and on a basic level, vocally, who puts us through our paces. So I was looking through the bass lines, and in it, there's one phrase of 2 bars which has a compass of well over an octave and nearly a half. And he really sets up these big gestures in order to reflect the emotional core of what he's trying to say with it. So there are also phrases that just go on a little bit too long, so it's hard for breathing. There are some words which he chooses to set in a way that don't feel 100% natural because he's really trying to emphasize them and bring them out above other parts. So it's about balance, it's about texture, it's musical interplay. It's Byrd at his finest, and it's Byrd sort of right at the end of the 16th century taking this Latin Mass to its highest art form and writing it perhaps to be sung one to a part. So again, the challenge here for Choir of the Earth is they're going to have many, many people on the parts, even if you're not stood next to them.
Joe, if there's one thing that you'd suggest choristers bear in mind to help them, what would it be?
Well, I think the one thing that will encompass the entire piece at every opportunity is know what you're singing in terms of the text. Know what you're speaking about and what the text means. I think in the score that we provided there is a translation at the front, which hopefully will be useful. But that is what Byrd will have had in his mind. He is entirely obvious from the way that he has set the music that he knows what those words mean, and moreover he believes what they mean as well. He was a fervent recusant Catholic, writing sort of boldly and brazenly, sort of against the law in a way. This music was not designed to be sung publicly, for sure. Initially anyway. Of course, it is now all over the world in Anglican services, but that is not what it was at the time. So having that in your head, that is the meaning of the text, will unlock lots of things. I think it's always good for singers to have images in their mind to get around technical issues. And there are lots of technical issues, as Owen was just alluding to in this piece, about breath control, about controlling the voice through the entire of your range. But I think that there are things, obviously in the credo there's a huge shopping list of things about the profession of faith, with lots of really stark images in them about Christ rising from the dead, etc. That I think really help. Well, it certainly helps me to sing the piece better, and forget about perhaps the niggling things in the back of my head and just going for it. I think that's what Byrd does in the setting of the piece. He's just gone for it. It's incredibly bold composition. So that would be my one thing, the text.
Guy, is there anything that you would add to that?
I think Joe's exactly right. I would have said the exact same thing. The other thing that Byrd does so well with the Latin is when we're talking about knowing, so the difference between translation and transliteration, and knowing exactly what the word that you're singing is meaning within the context of a phrase, which might not necessarily be the clearest thing when you're approaching a translation, because a translation is trying to get across necessarily the meaning as opposed to the in a more broad sense, as opposed to what each individual word might be directly translated as. But something that Byrd does that a lot of other Renaissance composers subtly miss is he nails the Latin pronunciation and the difference between words in Latin that are stressed on the penultimate syllable and the words that are stressed on the antepenultimate syllable. And 99% of the time in his music, he absolutely he does that really clearly. As Owen alluded to, sometimes he mixes it up, I think, because he knows what he's doing for other reasons. But yeah, if you know that you're singing suscipe as opposed to suscipe, which you could think it was, because a lot of Latin words, as I said, are stressed on the antepenultimate syllable, that will really help. So as part of that, I'd say that's one part of knowing exactly where you're going in each phrase. When you start each phrase, have a word, and I'd suggest, or a syllable, and I'd suggest a stressed syllable nearer the end of the phrase that you're really heading to. We find often when we're singing Miserere Nobis, which comes up quite often in the Mass in various different moments, and it's often a moment where you want to string it out because the Miserere, have mercy upon me. It feels like it should be drawn out. It can be possible to sometimes sort of lose your way through the first 3 or 4 notes of that phrase if you're not thinking about the nobis at the end of it. So yeah, that's something I make sure that you know where you're going when you set off.